What up? It's the real Keys. Any other fabrication of your imagination. And Universal Debates presents Real Random Versus Discussions, where we have random discussions about versus battles most people wouldn't think of. And today we got a battle of the record of ragnarok god. We got Ra, the god of the sun, the god of Egypt, Mr. Turn to Egypt into a desert and fuck a oasis, versus Poseidon, the most fearsome god and the king of the sea. And when I say sea, I'm not speaking Spanish. Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction and heaven's strongest brawler. Also, aka we doing this for Lil Saint and not a single Knights of the Zodiac character. Everybody big brother, Lord Hades. Don't get confused with Hades from Saint Seiya or Hades from God of War. Cause it's Hades, whoop ass Hades. And last but not least, we got
the gift of creation is at his whim. Whatever displeases him is sent back to the void. A timeless tyrant, an absolute Olympian. Eons ago, he waged a war with the mightiest beings in the universe. The clash of the titans. In the end, he overthrew his own father, killing Kronos himself. He is the biggest battle buff ever. Truly, the infinite among infinites, a real god of gods. Give it up for Zeus!
got big swole old ass Zeus who look older than both his brothers, but he is the youngest. This isn't all at once, this is in a gauntlet. It also won't be a specific order, it's just gonna be who he will win and who he will lose against. Now let's start with the elephant in the room. A lot of people think just because he wasn't in the main Record of Ragnarok roster that he's not on the same level as any of these other gods, which is just not true. One reason they weren't picked was because Zeus felt like they just would have won overwhelmingly. And the whole purpose of being called outer gods is because they're just gods that can't be controlled. They even say that Ra is one of the untouchable ones. So since we got that portion of the video done, now let's get started with the actual fight. Now let's start off with attack potency and destructive capabilities. Ra has a decent AP, being able to damage Ku, who was growing stronger and faster as the fight went on. But Ra's special ability, Prominence Field, makes it very hard to tell how durable the person he is fighting because it wears them out. It decreases their speed and AP, tires them, they'll start sweating profusely, looking like Jordan Peele when his wife asked what happened to the web browser history. But Ra was beating his ass for a good 3 to 4 chapters. So you gotta give Ra some kind of credit, and Cool Face was completely fucked up. Somebody hand him some water, cause that boy was on fire out there. And not in a good way, that boy was crispy. Looked like somebody at KFC ain't know how to cook. Remember kids, don't put grease in the oven, unless this is how you cook your dog, because they do call Cool the Hound of Ireland. And with his divine armor, he can create laser beams, which is the prominence field condensed down to a focus point, which gives his AP even more destructive capability. And in his armor is his time to shine. Get it? Time to shine. You know, he the sun god. You get it. But enough about that. We'll speak on that in his hacks and ability section later on. But let's move on to the sea god Poseidon. His AP is the hardest to gauge, really. Kojiro wasn't shown to be durable, and Adamas has no feats, but he did one-shot his big brother. He broke a Valkyrie, but the problem with that is that Valkyrie ability makes it meant to be broken. They have some good statements on him where they say that he is the most fearsome of the 12 Olympian gods. Silence the crowd with a glance. Shit, even baby Poseidon looks scary. It looks like he tell his siblings when they aren't on punishment. He has never looked at a fight seriously. That he didn't even look Kojiro in the eyes or take him serious, nor did he look his brother in the eyes and take him serious. And next thing you know, his brother was in the wild. But all I know is once you hear the whistling sound,
He's whistling?
Well, this should be quite interesting.
Be ready for a Wild Wild West old-fashioned showdown. Sound like two dudes in the saloon bumped into each other and he told them meet me outside at high noon. You can just hear the tumbleweed rolling by. So let's compare his AP to Ra's AP. So from what we know, we don't know how durable Kojiro was, and we don't know how durable Kukulin was. But I will have to say, Poseidon destroyed a divine weapon, but Ku showed that he wasn't to be played with and seemed more durable. So AP goes to Ra versus Poseidon. Next up we have Hades, this ain't Roman mythology, who in my subjective opinion believes has probably the highest AP in the whole series. He was able to beat up Beelzebub before the staff sent Beelzebub flying, and with the staff Beelzebub was able to tank his own attack and attacks from Tesla, and the attack that he tanked was forbidden to be used in Helheim by Hades himself. This same attack even terrified Zeus, and from recent chapters we find out that Satan is actually a primordial being, so this attack was a primordial's attack, but Beelzebub still thought that Hades was enough to kill him. Hades also soloed the Titans, who we found out all are the same strength as Atlas physically, who was able to hold the heavens. It originally took all 13 Olympian gods, who were the strongest of their pantheon, to defeat the Titans. Hades did it solo, and in his fight against Ken, all his attacks were devastating, causing large wind shockwaves with every attack. Even though named attacks were enough to crater the ground, even if you dodged the biting, the shockwaves would still be enough to cause harm to you. Ken Valkyrie was the one with the strongest defense, and he was still able to break it. Now let's compare his attack potency to Ra. So Ra was able to kill a whole bunch of gods before they finally stopped him, but Hades was able to solo the Titans, which is a much better feat, and do damage against Ken, who was the only human to defeat a god without a Valkyrie. So in this department, we'll have to give it to Hades. Mid-diff. Next we have Heaven's strongest brawler and best crunk dancer, Shiva. Shiva has some pretty decent feats in AP, especially in his base form. In his base form, he was able to overpower Raiden many of times. Most of those times, they were counterattacks, and Raiden is known for having the strongest muscles in history. Shiva gave the meaning of head-to-head a new definition by literally going head-to-head with Raiden. Shiva real hard-headed, but Shiva doesn't have to just use his head. Even his punches are very strong. With just a few punches, he's able to make Raiden leak, and Raiden was constantly punching him, and he barely made him bleed, except one time. Raiden thought his punches were just getting heavier and heavier, but metaphorically, Shiva has 1,115 guards riding on his back. Before this whole Record of Ragnarok series, Shiva was just a normal god who liked to dance all the time. And then him and his friend Rudra wanted to challenge all of the gods that were known as the Brawlers. And when they challenged all of the gods, they defeated all of the gods. And the number one god they had to go against was Indra. Shiva didn't actually defeat Indra, but Rudra defeated Indra. And Indra is an outer god like Ra. But by this time, Shiva was finishing his fights before Rudra. And their last two they had to fight was Brahma and Vishnu, which they both won against. And then the last and final fight that Shiva had to do was against his best friend Rudra, where he defeated him multiple times. And their fight, their sweat became the rain, their punches created shockwaves around the whole continent, and their fight lasted for weeks. A real battle of the century. But now let's compare Ra to Shiva. So Shiva beat Raiden and 1,115 guards, which is a very good feat. But the thing is, a lot of guards tried to stop Ra's rampage against mankind, and a lot on the way died. And it did not stop him from turning Egypt into what we know of it today, a desert. And neither were the gods or Egypt his actual target. Then we also have the slight confrontation between Shiva and Zeus. And base form Zeus was able to bitch Shiva with one hand. He had him kneel down to him. And this was old decrepit Zeus, not even his muscular form put him on his knees. While the same thing could be said about Ra. Ra actually went toe to toe with Zeus like he wasn't scared of anything. While Ares was going out of his mind, just walking close to Ra. He didn't really say much in the fight against Shiva. So I would have to give this one either a draw or Ra high dip. Now it's time to talk about big stepper, post all for one fight, All Might. Zeus. What is there to say? They compare Zeus to everything they think that's the top of the verse. He beat Kronos, which made him the strongest in the universe. Only receiving a broken jaw. Shit on Shiva in his base form. This form. Not this form. I consider this muscular Zeus. But the biggest problem is Adam. He hurt Adam, but this was in his Adonis form. So we don't really know how strong base muscular Zeus is to say how much his AP really is or above Ra. But defeating Kronos should put him way above Ra. He was the strongest in the universe, and at the same time, Ra was alive. So I would have to get a win to Zeus. Next, we need to go over speed. Ra had some pretty decent speed feats. Like I said before, he was able to keep up with Kukulkan, who was getting stronger and faster the longer the fight was going on. There's not really much to talk about in his base form, but when he uses his divine weapon, his speed drastically increased. He perception blitzed the many gods that were watching the fight. He also could perceive Gabog, but couldn't move out of his way due to his speed and AoE. But many gods weren't even able to see Ku after the jump, let alone when he kicked Gabog to activate. He also zipped around in his armor, perception blitzing Ku and the crowd. You couldn't even tell where he was until Ku got hit. Now, it might be my head canon to say this, but with his armor, he should be at least light speed. And with the laser beams, he should have light speed attack speed. It's all based on assumption, but my assumption is based off the fact that Ra is the sun god. So why shouldn't he use actual light as attacks? Now, there is a calc for Ares' perception speed. Ares was able to view Zeus's attacks, which were moving at 100 million meters a second, which is relativistic in speed, or sub-relativistic plus to relativistic in speed. But Ares' perception speed does not equal Zeus's attack speed. It's just what Ares could see. Now, based on that assumption, we can say that most of the gods move at sub-relativistic plus to relativistic speeds. And anyone they say is fast is moving at relativistic plus speed to perception blitz, which will also be relativistic plus speed, or light speed. So it will only make sense for his attacks to be light speed. But again, this is only headcanon. But now let's move on from Ra to Poseidon. So Poseidon is pretty self-explanatory. He was able to dodge Tsubame Geishi, which is a very fast attack. And it's kind of a sneak attack because your opponent swings his sword down and comes back up in the same exact movement, so you wouldn't be able to see him when he brings the sword up just as fast. But that's barely even where his speed begins, because Poseidon is known as one of the fastest gods, like that none of the people in the stands could even see what was going on with his attack. He's definitely top 3 in the verse. Well, top 4 since Okita does exist. But Sasuke was able to predict a lot of Poseidon moves 100 steps ahead of him. But he still became faster and faster for Kojiro not to be able to keep up with him at a certain rate anymore. Poseidon is the true speed demon. And when Poseidon uses true speed, that's when Kojiro started getting cut up. So let's say Kojiro's predictions are at the same level as Ares' perception. Ares was able to see a lot of Zeus's attacks, but was not able to see Poseidon attacks. And Poseidon attacks looked like it was literally raining down on the arena. So this would give Poseidon relativistic plus combat speed and reaction speed. But Poseidon showed he can even help up that speed too, making it that Kojiro had to create more predictions to keep up with Titan's speed. And he also had Kojiro chasing after images, had Kojiro swinging where Poseidon had already been. Kojiro was chasing the ghost, and this still wasn't his top speed. We also have a calc that puts his top speed at 2 times faster than light. And this created a dome of after images of him continuously striking that gives him 2 times FTL travel speed, or you could say movement speed. This speed caused Kojiro to see his death many a times in his predictions, so we can easily say that Poseidon wins in the speed category. Low to mid death. Next up is Hades, and this is literally the only scan that I can find that says anything about Hades' speed. So his speed really isn't anything to write home about. We can just say that he's the same speed as Ares' perception speed, which will make him so relativistic plus so relativistic, which Ra wins in this category. Low to mid death. Now back to Shiva, who is actually pretty decently fast. In his base form, he's kind of slow, but once he started moving and dancing, it's a whole different ball game with a new beast. They make it seem like he's in multiple places at one time and feel like you're being hit by multiple people. Once Shiva started dancing, Raiden wasn't able to do anything really to Shiva. The only reason he even didn't get defeated at this exact moment was because he grabbed Shiva and stopped him from dancing. Hermes even commented on Shiva's speed, and Hermes is the best to go by when it comes to commentary in a fight. Now let's compare Shiva to Ra using the same metric that we used earlier. So base guards that aren't that fast are so relativistic plus to relativistic. Shiva was fast while he was dancing, making him relativistic to relativistic plus in speed. So in base form, they would be equal. But once Ra uses his armor, he would have higher reaction and possibly higher movement and combat and attack speed. So this one goes to Ra, extremely high depth. Next, we got the easiest one to go over, Zeus. When you speak of Record of Ragnarok speed meta, you're speaking of Zeus, because that's who the whole meta is based off of. Basically, he was able to react and see Adam's attacks, which he just copied from Zeus, but sent them back faster and harder. He was able to move in 0.000001 seconds and beyond. During the whole Titanomachy, he went untouched except for one attack. Zeus and Adam both have a speed calc, which puts both of them above faster than light, which gives Zeus faster than light combat and reaction speed. So the winner in this category goes to Zeus. Pretty easily low diff. Now it's time for the next section and the next stat, durability. Now there isn't really much to say about Ra's durability because we just don't know. We don't get to see much. The most we see is him block some rubble and blocks the spear from Ku. Other than that, he's really unknown. It's just he overwhelmed Ku so much in the fight at the beginning. The most we can say is he has endurance from surviving Gable, which is a sure hit kill, but other than that, everything else is head cannon. The fight lasted 15 minutes. But let's move on to Poseidon, whose durability isn't much better. Poseidon, every time he got hit, he was leaking blood. But the thing about it is he kept fighting until the very last. And even after bleeding, Poseidon showed a masochistic side of himself where he seemed to enjoy the fact that he was bleeding. He hasn't ever really been challenged in a fight, so this may be his first time being challenged and he enjoys it. But he was still able to keep going after getting his arm cut off and then grabbing onto that arm with his other arm, getting that one cut off, and then grabbing onto the end of the trident with his mouth. That's some gangster shit. The fight lasted 13 minutes, so durability and endurance might have to go to Poseidon, high depth. Next, we got Hades, who seems to have a very strong suit and durability. He was constantly tanking his own attack that were being sent back by Ken. He was also tanking Ken's attack, and all the attacks Ken were sending back were all stated to be one-shot attacks. So Hades was tanking multiple one-shot attacks with barely any harm to himself. The only harm that he really received was this one hit right here from Ken's attack, and the only other attack was from his own ability that we'll speak on in his hacks and ability section. Even against the Titans, he didn't receive any damage other than from his own ability. The fight lasted almost 13 minutes. Durability go to Hades, no death. Now back to Shiva. Shiva has shown some good durability feats against Raiden, even though Raiden is supposed to be a grappler. He tanked multiple attacks with minimal visible injuries. He fought his way to the top of the Hindu pantheon with minimal injuries too. He also fought through the injuries inflicted on him by Raiden, which he lost 3 of his 4 arms. His dance also harms him, and he can endure the heat for a nice amount of time, but that would be an issue against Ra, and you will see in the hacks and ability section also. Raiden was considered the human with the strongest muscles. I know sometimes muscles don't actually equate to striking strength, but we gotta give him some credit. He almost overloaded his own body to explode. You can see that his AP and striking strength does go up, and if it wasn't for his Valkyrie, she was able to keep his muscles in control. And this was base form Raiden, so even with full control of his muscles, Raiden would be even stronger. Shiva was still able to tank attacks from him. The fight lasted 11 minutes. Comparing Shiva's durability to Ra, again, Ra doesn't really have any durability feats, so Shiva wins this, no deal. And now we back to Big Stepper Zeus. Another easy one for Zeus. He took an uncountable amount of attacks from Adam, who was throwing attacks that were harder than the ones Zeus were throwing. Adam was throwing punches like Zeus just got his grandmama pregnant after he just slept with Zeus in a down-low relationship. And against Kronos, he only suffered a broken jaw. And Kronos only got 1 attack in on him, and that was that 1 broken jaw. The fight lasted 7 minutes, so he had the shortest fight, but tanked the most attacks. So another win for Zeus, no death. Now we're on to the best part. Hacks, ability, skills, weapon, AoE, and range. Let's start with Ra's signature technique, Prominence Field. Utilizing his aura, he creates an intense heat in the surrounding area, 360 degrees around him. This heat makes Ra untouchable. You can collapse from exhaustion if coming too close to him, and his heat can extend throughout the entire arena, as if it was a desert. The other Egyptian gods had to hand out refreshments. The heat instantly put Ares on his ass. It weakened Ku's attack and made him less durable and slower, and it even made gods such as Shiva sweat from the stands. Ra has his divine weapon Horus, which he calls from the sky, fusing with it to become his Horahadi form. Although it appears as armor, it's not, but actually an amplifier of Ra's prominence field, allowing him to condense it into a heat blast that he can concentrate into different areas, creating things like jetpacks and lasers. This amplifies his attacks and defensive power by being able to shoot those lasers from anywhere. He can amp punches with it, as well as improve his maneuverability by using it as the jetpack. With the never setting sun flare shift, Ra can condense the heat of his prominence field behind him, propelling him in the air and allowing him control flight, as well as enhanced speed. With wings of light, midnight sun, by using propulsion, Ra attacks his opponent furiously from multiple angles, leaving them unable to counter, and finishes by slamming them into the ground. And with prominence field maximum output, Ra unleashes all of his condensed heat with 1 big blast of energy in front of him. Now on to Poseidon. He doesn't really have too many moves, and I know I'm gonna butcher these names, so I might just say the English name for some of these. First we have Amphitrite. Poseidon uses his trident to unleash incessant threats at blinding speeds in a circular pattern. Next is Divine Lightning, which Poseidon leaps into the air above his opponent, unleashing a barrage of trident threats onto them. This attack is so fast that countless after images are created and makes it look like it's actually raining. Next is his final and most powerful attack, 40-day flood. Poseidon creates an enormous dome of after images, unleashing trident strikes that combine his divine might and godly speed. So if we compare Poseidon's and Ra's hack, Ra wins this easily. Poseidon is really nothing but a stat monster. If we compare their weapons and skills, Ra also wins this because his armor is just so much more versatile. And all Poseidon got is that, is you happy to see me stick? And for AoE and range, Ra wins this one yet again. Poseidon was able to fill the battlefield up with after images, but Ra was able to fill the whole stadium up with his heat. For Hades, he has his biting. And his first move is Hammer of the Netherworld. Hades jumps into the air and jabs forward with his Biden, creating a huge gust of wind in the surrounding area. His next move is Breaker of Storm. Hades thrusts his Biden forward, creating air currents into piercing blades all around the area. Next, we have Smasher of Earth. Hades grips his Biden by his pole arm, then releases a strong downward swing onto his opponent with either one or two hands for more power. This move's power was able to overwhelm Ken's Heavenly Hand of Defense. Next, he has Horn of Fertility. Hades swings his Biden downwards as a feint before using it as a leverage against an opponent, blocking it to lean back and knee his opponent in the face. And now we have his actual ability, Pluto's Encore. Hades' special blood that allows him to infuse his life force to weapons, like his Biden, making them far more powerful than before. This will, however, drain Hades' own life force faster until he eventually dies. And then we have Encore Ice, Blood of Dawn. Hades thrusts his Encore Desmos forward while charging at his opponent. This move was able to easily pierce through Ken's almighty spalders, as well as overpower the Ken Shi Wang Yan Cut technique, which contained the full power of Ken and Alvitra in a single strike. Now let's compare him to Ra. Basically, this is another Poseidon situation. Hades is literally nothing but Poseidon, but stronger and slower. So hacks and abilities go to Ra. Weapons, same thing with Poseidon. He literally just has a Biden, but he does have more techniques than Ra and Poseidon, but they're not as useful as Ra's. Weapons and skills go to Ra. Mid diff and AoE in range. All of Hades' attacks have shockwaves to them and air pressure, so he actually does have a decent AoE in range, but I don't think those are competing with Ra's lasers that he can shoot from in front, behind, or around him, or competing with the actual prominence field, which the closer you get, the weaker everything becomes. The only thing that he would actually be able to do is use Desmos and then use the shock waves to hurt him at that point. But no, he still is not winning this, but he does have better AoE in range than Poseidon. So this is mid diff for Ra. And now we have Shiva, and most of his abilities are surrounded by his dancing, hidden treasure, or Svarga. By dancing, Shiva is able to attack his opponent with higher speed and power while confusing them. Its unpredictable rhythm allows Shiva to continuously attack his opponent with multiple hit attacks, while his opponent is under the impression of being attacked by multiple enemies at once. Tandava. Due to his intense dancing, Shiva's body becomes superheated and starts to combust, which increases the power of his attacks and burns his opponent. Hit Vatsa, Flaming Tiger Claw Dance. Shiva jumps into the air and brings down a kick while combusting his feet, slicing and burning his opponent. The flames created from the kick is hot enough to cauterize flesh. And then for his final one, Tandava Karma Samsara War Dance. Ashes. Shiva's ultimate secret technique. Shiva is able to directly stimulate his admin, resulting in an incredible increase in power and speed. Additionally, his body combusts and burns in a higher level than the hidden treasure of Svarga, to the point of burning his surroundings, including objects far away from him. But Shiva himself will eventually burn out if he uses the technique for too long. Final and last technique he has is Diva Loca, Final Act Flames Dance. It's just a straight side kick used by Shiva under the state of Tandava Karma. The kick was so strong and burning hot that it overpowered Raiden's Yagatsu and ripped his arm in half. Now to compare his hacks to Ra's. Shiva has very decently strong hacks, and they would be very, very good if the person they were fighting were mainly a brawler. Like, if it was to come down to their base forms against base form, Shiva would definitely have Ra in this category. But prominence field and everything he can do with the divine weapons would pretty much put him above him when it comes to hacks. So hacks will go mid-def to Ra. For skills and weapons, they are about even match when it comes to the amount of skills they have. But I would still have to give it to Ra again. Just that prominence field and divine weapon just puts him above Shiva And if Shiva had a divine weapon, maybe he would actually be put higher when it came to skills and weapons. But again, Ra mid-depth. For AoE and range, Shiva lacks in this department because he's a brawler, so he's meant to fight up close. And Ra can fight up close and from a distance. And again, with the prominence field, getting close to him would be a complete issue. He can shoot lasers. But we have to give Shiva some credit for his heat being felt throughout the whole arena. So mid-depth for Ra. Now lastly, back to Zeus. Zeus has Meteor Jab, which is a combo series of jabs at extreme speed, which has been calced to be faster than light. He has Divine X, which is a powerful leg sweep. His footwork, which Zeus builds up momentum, increasing his speed, creating after images. And his most powerful attack, the fist that surpasses time. Zeus performs a punch so fast that the time frame of the punch stops at 1e to the 20th power of a second before the rest of the time frame can be seen. A punch that happens so fast that time doesn't even get a chance to pass. This allows him to move at infinite speed. Zeus' ultimate straight punch. In Zeus' ultimate form, which is called Adamus, he compresses all the muscles and directs his power into his fist. The attack is also described to be an unavoidable one-hit kill, implying them to be faster than any of his previous attacks too. But the way it really works is he uses all his attacks in the combo. Now with his hacks and abilities compared to Ra, he don't really have many hacks and abilities, but the one ability that surpasses time, I would have to give it everything above Ra. It's just a better hacks than anything anyone else in the series really has. So Zeus win this high depth. For weapon and skills, Zeus really ain't show much. He was just a brawler, and all he really did was show a punch that was extremely fast and a kick that was extremely fast. So I can't really say much for him in the skills department. And for the weapon, he didn't have a weapon. I would have loved to see Zeus with actual lightning, but they didn't have it, so I don't even know what Zeus we even talking about at this point. Even the Zeus streaming app got lightning, so I have to give it to Ra low diff. Now for AoE and range, again, Zeus is a brawler, so he's best in close quarter combat, and Ra can shoot lasers from a distance, so this one really isn't too hard to say. Ra low diff. Now it's time to get into the actual fight. Now the fight against Ra and Poseidon would be very decently close. It would all depend on how they would act during the fight. So in character, Poseidon doesn't really try to show anyone he is very arrogant and doesn't take his opponent seriously. And if he does this against Ra, he could either one shot because Ra has no durability, or die because Ra is just gonna keep blasting him with his lasers. And speed wise, he would pretty much beat Ra in speed, but he would also be slowed down as he gets closer and closer to Ra due to the prominence field, so the speed advantage might be lowered. And the prominence field is passive. This means that he wouldn't have to activate it for it to drain Poseidon of his speed, allowing him to be anything if not equal to Poseidon in speed. I would have to give this to Ra high diff. Now for Ra against Hades, Hades could actually end this in one single attack. That's all he would need, because we don't know how durable Ra actually is, and we know Hades has one hit KO attack, but prominence field could possibly negate that from it being one hit KOs. Also negates his speed, but the shockwaves could still hurt him. The negation of the speed could also equal no shockwaves, but we have no clue. But we also know that Hades is extremely slow. He's not really fast or in any kind of way. We have no speed feats for him, while we know in Ra's divine form that he is extremely fast. But I do believe that Hades could win this if he uses Desmos off the gate and tries to fight close quarters. But if Ra gets into his divine armor, it is completely over with. So I have to give mid depth to high depth to Ra. Now for Ra versus Shiva, I think this is probably the closest and the best fight out of all of them. Shiva is a brawler, and Ra's prominence field was able to even make Shiva sweat just from the stands. So Shiva has some resistance to heat from Tandiva Karma, but we know it has to be extremely hot for him to be able to feel it from the stands. So Shiva's strongest move wouldn't even work. So he'll have to do this with straight hand to hand and hope that his unpredictable movement speed would allow him to win. But I can't see him winning due to Ra being able to be everywhere on the battlefield at one time and shooting lasers from a distance. He wouldn't have to fight him up close. So another one, Ra, low diff. And now we've come to the conclusion, Zeus versus Ra. This one is the easiest to go over and to say who wins. Zeus low diff. There is nothing Ra can do against the fist that surpass time, because once it's activated, he is already hit. He already doesn't have any actual faster than light feats to even contend with Zeus, who does have faster than light feet. The lasers would help if Zeus just stayed off of him the whole time, but with his feet work in Adamus form, it would be over with pretty quickly. He has better AP, durability, and speed, so yeah, this is an easy low deal fight for Zeus. But that's the end of this video. If you want to see more real Roundiversal discussion, like and subscribe to my channel and follow Universal Debate Group on Facebook, and be ready to catch me on my next video.